Good evening. My name is Karen Kirkpatrick. I'm one of the pastors serving here at Ames First United Methodist Church. Pastor Nikki is also here in person, and we have a team of leaders ready to present for you the State of the Church address for 2021, and we'll be covering quite a bit of things here. We've got a manual clicker. His name is Mike, or whoever's running the PowerPoint up there. So Mike, if you would move us to our first slide, I would appreciate that. There we go. Every year we start these reminding ourselves of what our mission is. Our mission of the church is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And local churches, that would be us, local churches provide the most significant arenas through which disciple making occurs. And that comes from our own book of discipline, which is the rule of how United Methodist churches are to operate and how we operate together. Our focus is the mission. Everything we do needs to point to that. Next slide, please. So here at First United Methodist Church, our mission is to make disciples of Jesus who serve beyond the walls. It's a reminder that disciples don't just stay within the church, but move beyond the walls to serve the world in Jesus' name. Next, please. The most effective way to make disciples is in partnership with God and others. So we both give and receive help from others and the Holy Spirit. That means that we are faith formation partners in all that we do here at the church. Next slide, please. That's one I missed. I say it every year. Must have it out of order. I will say this every year that I have an opportunity. Engaging more adults in ministry supports the general mission of the church, which is to make disciples. As we look to align all that we do with our mission, we keep in mind that the best way to do it is to engage adults in ministry. Now, that doesn't mean children and youth are not important. It recognizes the reality that engaging adults also brings along the engagement of youth and children. So engaging youth and children does not necessarily engage the adults, but we must intentionally engage adults in their own personal faith journey. Next slide, please. So here's the frame for our discussion this evening. I'm going to give you a brief overview of our direction and journey so far, and then Sharon Bowen, who is one of our co-chairs of our council, will give an update on the 2021 goals. Where are we? How are we doing? What did we do well? What didn't we do well? And then Matt Carney, who is leading our rapid response team during our COVID. We'll talk about COVID updates, and Kevin Hinders, who is our other co-chair for council, will give reentry strategy. We actually did have a reentry strategy coming out of COVID that we're following as we speak. Steve Hanlon's not able to join us today. He's the chair of missions, but he has a video on rolling up our sleeves. How are we doing in missions, and what are the directions that we're headed toward in missions? And then Marty Sankey, who's one of our chairs for finance, will give a financial update so that we know how we're doing in the midst of the pandemic. And then Kevin and Sharon will return again and talk about directions for our 2022 goals, which we will be talking about at council, and we always, of course, look for input to that. Next slide, please. As we start looking back, I want to remind you that you took a church assessment tool, that's what CAT stands for, Church Assessment Tool, in 2017. And this slide represents the key feedback that we got from that assessment tool. A focus on spiritual formation, reminding us the power of the gospel to transform and not simply bring comfort. And it requires major changes to regain a significant level of vitality and health. As I recall, we were on the edge of what was classified as the ICU, and that's a pretty precarious place to be. We need to clarify our purpose and mission, they said, and we need to focus on doing a few things very, very well. The other thing that we really focused on as well is that we have 5 drivers, and 5 drivers of satisfaction. 4 of the 5 were focused on the work of the clergy instead of the work of the laity, and so we've been moving to shift to a healthier partnership over these past 3 years. Next slide, please. So that leads us to the very first and basic shift that we made was to move towards more lay-led ministries, where staff came in underneath and supported the work of the laity in the church, the members of the church, and we were working on member and staff partnerships. This reflects the history of who we are as United Methodists, and as we began as a lay-led movement, that mindset of members of the church and people who are helping the members work together in ministry, and the staff and the clergy support that effort. But more than that, it also engages the people of the church in ministry directly, rolls up our sleeve and gets their hands dirty, so to speak, which gives them ownership, gives all of you ownership of the ministry and helps you engage in your own faith journey. Because remember, I said the most important thing is engaging adults in ministry. Staff and clergy then, as I said, become more like a facilitator and focus our efforts on leadership development to make sure that we're developing leaders as they make themselves known. And that benefits the church as a whole. Next slide, please. One of the next things we did was to begin to work on shifting our paradigm. The churches, United Methodist churches over the years have been very well trained to make members. And the shift that we're making is to move from a membership focus to a discipleship focus. And we started this 3 years ago as we started to shift to Lay Led Ministries. This shifted the heart of our ministries to a faith formation approach, and that also increases natural synergy with worship and missions ministries. So what you're looking at is a Venn diagram that we made early on that shows the overlap and different age areas. And so we have now divided our teams, working teams, into age areas. The strategy then becomes to navigate the overlaps with communications and collaboration rather than setting hard boundaries or to duplicate our efforts. And this integrated team ministry helps to keep us flexible while also watching out for the gaps where we need to transition for growth between age groups. This is an ongoing work as ministries rise and shift. And COVID, as Matt will tell you in a few minutes, COVID certainly has been a challenge to do that. Next slide, please, Mike. The thing that we did last year that was of great importance and we continue to work on this year is to identify and clarify our mission and vision, our strategies and our values, and to align everything we do with those mission, vision, and strategies. We fleshed that out, and we started to align everything that we are doing under our mission. Our leadership now continues to lift up the why we do what we do as we strategize the how we do what we do. And so with that brief introduction of the last 3 years of our journey, which is really a very quick snippet, I want to turn it over to Sharon Bowen, who's co-chair for the Church Council, and she is going to remind us what we said our goals were for 2021 and how we're doing on those goals. Sharon?
Last fall, in preparation for Charge Conference, we set 3 goals for 2021. They are, we need a new slide, thank you. They are to work toward financial health, work with other United Methodist churches in forming and implementing a circuit, and implement our faith formation pathway to grow our ministry and build relationships both internally and beyond our walls. Next slide. Here is a review of how we have worked to accomplish these goals. First, to work toward financial health. Marty will go over these in his message regarding finances of the church. However, I would like to share that we have been able to build a cash reserve for emergencies, and we are paying a higher percentage of our apportionments, though still not 100%. To work with other United Methodist churches in forming and implementing circuit. Charge Conference this year will be with the circuit, and we are hosting that circuit. Pastor Karen is the co-leader of the Story County Circuit. She is the clergy leader, and there's a laity leader as well. The clergy have been meeting and working on what the circuit will involve. This is not the same as the 3-point charge we are in with Colo and Collins. And just this week, it was shared that there will be a Story County Circuit choir meeting to prepare a Christmas cantata to be recorded for all the churches to use. The third goal, next slide, I think, I can't see it. Is that it? Third goal was to implement our faith formation pathway to grow our ministry and build relationships both internally and beyond our walls. The pandemic has forced us to look at different ways to accomplish this goal, but I believe we have done a decent job. Expanding our virtual capability, in addition to live streaming our worship services on Sunday mornings, Sunday school classes for all ages have been virtual and hybrid now, along with many small groups. Confirmation class was held virtually, which allowed youth from other churches in central Iowa to join us, and that will continue this year. Pastor Karen held her foundation class virtually as well. We now have 6 Zoom rooms and are in the process of getting equipment so that all classrooms will be able to hold hybrid sessions. We have 2 OWL, what they're called OWL devices, and a third device is in the process of being obtained. These devices will make meetings more inclusive, as some members are wanting to meet in person, yet others are still hesitant. We added a new Sunday evening study group, which is a hybrid meeting. This grew out of this past year's foundation class. And we are sharing stories of members' activities outside of the church. You will hear more about this in Steve Hanlon's presentation. People who have helped to Steve has helped to facilitate members sharing how they are in mission outside the church, outside of our walls. Now Matt will tell you about our COVID.
Thank you, Sharon. So as everybody knows, COVID has been a huge impact not only on this church, but on the community and everybody in our lives outside of our communities as well. And so about 1.5 years ago, we started down this path of trying to figure out what this COVID was, what its impact is. And so starting back in September, or actually in March of last year, we made the decision to shut the church down. So about 1.5 years, we've been operating this quasi-remote mode. We formed the rapid response team to have leaders across the church be able to meet quickly and react to any changes we had. As you can see in the slide here, we've come quite a ways. It may not see it, but there's been a lot of decisions made along the way. We went from initially just remote services. We have then added a in-person service with social distancing in place, and then moved eventually to where we are now, where we actually have 3 services going here. And then the question is this our new normal? Are we going to move off this eventually? I think we all figured at this point we would be off this and we'd be back to normal. And I don't know if that's ever going to happen again. But things like masks, where to buy masks, how to wear masks, the different masks, we didn't know. I think we're all experts in that. Zoom meetings, these remote meetings have become a way of life for many of us, both within this church and at our own work lives. The picture you see, there's elbow bumps. I didn't think I'd ever see a thing as an elbow bump, but handshakes have kind of gone by the way. And then the CDC. I think most of us have spent some time either listening to the news about the CDC or perusing their websites. These are all things that we are doing regularly now that we never did before. Next slide, please. So we're having to learn about life with COVID, trying to operate with it. And so there's a couple things we want to raise up to the congregation here. Is first our staff. So as you can see in the picture, our staff has had to learn to work both internally in the building in a isolated way, but also over remote meetings themselves. And so we've got kind of a blend of people that work in the office every day and those that dial in for remote meetings. But it doesn't stop there. They have to work with this church community we have. And you can see in the bottom, one of the things we have to work through as a congregation is tolerance. The whole perception of vaccines and masks gives rise to a large disparity of views and beliefs in that regard. And we have all of that within our community here. And we also have fatigue. I think every one of us has experienced what we have to do day in, day out with this COVID in place. And it's fatiguing. After about 1.5 years, I think we're all kind of tired of the processes, different rules, lack of rules, different viewpoints. It just fatigues us. And so what we try to do to coordinate that is, pull the church together through communication methods. Then also isolation. As you can see in the pic, we are isolated from each other quite a bit now. It's hard within this church to get people face to face. There's fears and beliefs and how we handle that internally. And so we as a leadership organization are trying to work around those as well. All right, next slide, please. So where we are today, so you can see we're in the fall of 2021. We've been at this for about a year and a half. And so the first thing you see we're at 3 services, and that's quite amazing considering what the world's going through today. And what we have decided within these worship services is to make one more restrictive to support those that still have some concerns about the pandemic and the virus and how it's spread within a facility. And so what we allow that to happen is within our first 8:30 service, that's the more separated, restricted service, to allow those folks to get in and out of the building with fewer concerns. The second 11 a.m. service is more open, just to allow people to move in and out of the church. And then we have our Saturday service. And so we're trying to balance concerns and weights there in that regard. And the second one here is our children and youth are still active. So you may not see it because we're not in the church like we used to, but the children and youth are active in this church, and still, thanks to Nicole and her efforts, are still moving forward and pursuing their activities quite regularly. And again, that's a good champion point for us right now. And then again, as I said, the staff's operating on site. We have them fully operating, maybe not normally, but they are doing the duties they need to do in and out, and that's good in this environment. And then vaccination. So I put a point on here. Right now, within Story County, we're about 10% positivity, which is a little higher, but it's not much higher than kind of our steady state has been through the late part of the summer here. So that's good news with the ramp up of the students and activities that we have going on in this community. And then finally, where do we go from here? So the leadership, our goal here is to always make sure we're taking a step forward. We don't want to take any steps backwards for COVID. So we're being cautious, but we keep moving forward. So we're allowing groups to come into the building. We're slowly reducing the limitations and restrictions, and we're slowly opening up our services. So I would just ask for your patience with us as we continue to do this. Again, our goal is to continue to progress towards a normal, if that's where we'll ever get to, and not take any steps back. So I guess with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
So to kind of reset the stage here a little bit, if you think back to February, March of this year, we were excited about vaccinations and the prospects of, as we talked about, a little bit normalcy. So we were thinking to ourselves, do we just rush back to what we were before the pandemic, or do we want to take this opportunity to do a bit of a reset and think about who do we want to be and where do we want to focus our resources? So what we did is we developed a re-entry strategy, and we put together a task force. And listed on the screen here, you can see the people that participated in that task force. We tried to get a variety of different people, backgrounds and interests, some more mature, some younger, and some with families, some without, and so forth. And I shout out to the people that participated in that as well. I think we met online 4 different times and averaged about 2 hours apiece. So it was a pretty big commitment to participate in this task force. So if you want to go to the next slide, where we started was around kind of our target audience. And I think it's really important to point out that we have been and continue to be a church that wants to be welcoming to all. Anybody that wants to come to this church, we want them to be part of this church, and that's what we'll continue to do. But as most of you would know and recognize, it's a little bit hard to be all things to all people. So if we have to think about where to focus our resources and our communications, that's where we headed down this path of trying to kind of highlight some of the demographics and psychographic areas. So we as a group determined that that school-age family group was a good target area. Retirement community is also a growing segment in the Ames community. And then also those that feel that connection to downtown. You know, several years ago when we made the commitment to invest in this church and expand it, we were very intentional about wanting to maintain our home here in downtown Ames and continue to support the community that surrounds the downtown area. So that's kind of the demographic area, but when you think about the psychographic groups that we think might be a good fit for this church is those that really seek to be active participants in their faith formation versus maybe those that just show up on Sundays and go home and that's their participation. I think if you think about our church, there's a lot of very active people and very involved and want to be active participants in their faith building and growth and development. And then also those that seek that kind of a hometown feel. And I know that's what brought me to this church, and growing up in a rural community, when you walk in here, it still has a little bit of that hometown feel. So that those are some of the target audience groups that you'll see us continue to focus on. But again, want to point out, we as a church want to be welcoming to all comers and anybody that wants to walk through that door. Next step is we wanted to think about our worship services and what time, when, where, how, formats, different things like that. And what the task force really ended up focusing on was more around convenience and options, okay? I think we all love to walk into a full church, right? That feels really good. But when you think about that, that's kind of about us and us feeling good, and not necessarily about how do we bring more people in, how do we attract more disciples and more people that are interested in what's going on in this church. So that was kind of the focus around that and providing options. So the recommendation was to continue to provide the 5:30 Saturday service, the 8:30 Sunday morning service, 11 o'clock on Sunday, as well as our online options, virtual options. I think that will probably be kind of our front door in the future. It'll be the chance for people that aren't regular attendees to check us out online and see what we're all about. So we're going to continue to invest in that area, along with providing the in-person type options. And we also encourage the church to keep that schedule throughout the year versus the change in the summertime that sometimes created a little confusion in knowing when the change was, what time services were. So encourage the church to continue on that same schedule throughout the year. As we reopened too, we wanted to make sure that we had options for the comfort levels out there, and you've seen us do that, where I think Matt already mentioned the more protective service at 8:30 and more relaxed service at 11, and we'll continue to think about that and how we make sure that all the different varying degrees of concerns out there are represented and have options, and there'll be a strong focus in making sure that we continue that virtual option, whether it be for worship services or committee meetings or Sunday school, small groups, whatever it is. We are gearing up and making sure that we have the resources for that. I do want to pause. I forgot, if you think about the options that you have to participate in our services, we have the 3 services, live services here on Saturday and 2 on Sunday. We have the virtual option, and then we have the same sermon, same messages being delivered at Colo and Collins. So you really have about 7-8 different options to participate in the same message every Sunday. But that's the reason why I want to bring that up is that we also can provide that message in different formats. Okay, so as we open up more and have more regular services, I think you'll see the staff provide maybe a more traditional service at one time and a more contemporary service at another time on Sunday. So we'll develop those options as time goes on to make sure that we have meeting the variety of different needs and interests of the church. The last thing on this slide here is just we got to continue to communicate our plans, our strategies, and the different services that are being offered, and that's a ever ongoing growth and development opportunity I think we have as a church is around that communication piece. The next thing we did was wanted to talk about and think about the programming, the different resources and things that we have available, and we really encourage to continue to focus on the faith formation pathway that the adult ministries group developed a couple of years ago. So as on the screen, you can see the 4 different levels here, starting with the engage segment, which is about how do we inspire people to walk through our door in the first place, to gain some interest. The connecting phase is around encouraging visitors to get involved, to develop a relationship with those around them and with God, and to feel God's presence. And the equip phase is about kind of developing your understanding of your faith and your commitment to faith, which then gives you the tools and the ability to go to the next stage, which is sending, where we actually participate in leading groups or service and mission projects inside and outside of our walls. So if you click to the next screen, you can see we do a really great job at this church with the connecting phase and the equipping side of things. We have lots of different options there. Where we have some real opportunities is around the sending and engaging. And that's our opportunity to bring more disciples into this church, to gain some interest as they see us being active out in the communities and different things like that, to encourage people to want to come through our front door and see what's going on here and be a part of it. So we're neat. We got some work to do there, but there's some good things going on already, and some real strength in those 2 middle areas. Next slide, please. So kind of a summary on the programming here is that, we're going to continue to invest in the children, the youth, the intergenerational programs, and the wide variety of equipping options. We don't want to take away from anything that we've done there, so we want to continue to invest there. We need to improve our communications. Make sure everybody knows what's available, what options are there for people to participate in. And then as you think about, additional opportunities, the first bullet point there, I think we're already doing a lot of work there in the digital and hybrid options that have already been talked about. We need to continue to explore mission opportunities outside of the church, and Steve will be talking about some of the things in that area. So we got some great progress going on there. And then we need to continue to seek out additional leaders that are willing to step up and lead things like a parents group, men's groups. We're probably a little light in some of the men's activities that are available here in this church. And then also finding a way to continue to connect with some of the retirement communities. And I think also we've had some great things already started there in that space. So staff and volunteers is the last area that we tried to tackle a little bit. It's my belief that we have a staff today that works very cohesively. They take advantage of each other's strengths and really leverage those, and we need to continue to do that. Some of the opportunities for the future, I should mention, we probably got a couple of gaps right now in our staff, a couple openings that we need to fill. But finding the right people will be really important. I'm sure everybody's aware of Kim Heidemann, and then Myrna's impending retirement too. So do we have a job description already posted for Kim's position, or? Okay, it's getting ready to be posted, if not already. So we have both of those positions available. So we need to continue to find ways to recognize and multiply the volunteers that we have in this church. We have a lot of people already very active, and we need to recognize those, and then continue to find others that are willing to step up and participate. Need to invest in our staff and our volunteers' ability to develop and execute communication plans. So how do we make people more aware, again, of everything that's going on in this area? Kind of a dream that we might have is some additional help in the communications, social media, technology. Some of those things are being filled by some great people already, but they're doing those as part of other full-time jobs that they have today. So we need to continue to find ways to expand that, and maybe someday down the road, adult ministries coordinators. So these are kind of some wish type items. When we get into a position where we can provide those types of things, we would love to add those types of resources to our staff. And then finally, we have is how do we want to measure our success as a church? And we already are measuring attendance, membership, and financial contributions, and we'll continue to measure those things. Those are really important. But those are somewhat what we would call lag measures. once they're measures, it's almost too late to do anything about it. So what we want to do is think about what are some of those lead measures that will really get the flywheel going and help us drive some of those attendance numbers. And that's, again, Karen already mentioned the goal to measure adult engagement by faith formation pathway segments. So those are those 4 segments that I talked about earlier, and trying to measure the engagement we have in each one of those segments. So that's one of our goals for the future, is to do some more measurement in that area. So with that, Steve Hanlon is the chair of our missions and outreach group. He was unable to be here in person, but as we've learned through the pandemic, we have different ways to present now than having somebody here live in person. So Steve pre-recorded his message for this evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Hanlon, and I'm the chair for the Missions and Outreach Committee. I'd like to be with you tonight, but I've had a pre-planned trip to Wyoming, so you're getting me on video. I'm going to share my slideshow with you at this point in time. And okay. So, as I stated, I'm with the Mission and Outreach Committee. This is our committee. I'm the chair. Pastor Nikki's also on this. Sherry, Ron, Nancy, Peggy, Carol, and Dawn. The function of the Mission and Outreach Committee involves the financial contributions to missions, which is the financial giving by church members, except for apportionments, which are not part of the church budget. We do have several special offerings that are taken up throughout the year during church. In addition to these, such as Encore Sunday, Native American Ministry Sunday, we also have the Heifer Project, which is directed towards Father's Day and collecting money then. We have the Crop Walk, and that's coming up on October 10th. And then we also have the Inner Gathering, which is October 20th. So many of these contributions that are given to the missions are undesignated purposes. In fact, most of them are, which the Mission and Outreach Committee designates to specific purposes. The designations are made in these 4 categories that you see, when we do make a special effort to include something in each of the categories. So let's look at the local first. Locally, and you'll see the amount of money that we have donated so far this year. So we have Food at First, Emergency Residence Project, Good Neighbor Emergency Assistance, Access, and YSS. As far as, we'll say the state or the Iowa Conference, we have donated to Women at the Well and the conference mission apportionments. Nationally, we have UMCOR, which U.S. Disaster Response Advance. We've donated $1,000 to that already. And then internationally, we also have a couple UMCOR. The first one is the International Disaster Response, which assists in natural and human-caused disasters that strike outside the United States. The one prior to was within our borders of the United States. And then we also have donated to Global Migration Advance, which works with partners to examine the cause of migration from a certain area. It also ensures the 4 rights: the right to stay, the right to be safe, passage, the right to welcoming and belonging, and the right to return. And then also to Jordan Hinders of Life to Life Global Building. In addition to the organizations that we've donated to, we also sponsor 2 missionaries, Doug Williams in Argentina and Jane Keys in Zimbabwe. In April of this year, several of us had the opportunity to go on a virtual mission trip with Doug, met some of the parishioners he has down there, some of the things that he's doing, several of the other missionaries that are located down in Argentina. It was a fun week. One evening for a week, we got on and took a trip to Argentina. And then also, Jane did a video call or conference with United Methodist Women in March. And you'll see we've donated $1,500 to both of those missionaries so far. Now, many years, the focus of the mission committee has been to donate funds that are given by church members to specific organizations, and we will continue to do that. So, and furthermore, we do appreciate members' donations and helping these organizations out. However, with the new mission statement of making disciples of Jesus who serve beyond the walls, we are changing our focus on our missionary acknowledgments, and the individuals that are the hands and feet of God and are rolling up their sleeve and becoming disciples. So I'd like to quickly just focus on the non-monetary, the volunteer work that's being done, the things that have been donated to the mission committee, such as Micah. And let me point out, we've set a goal for the end of the year of 1,200 pounds of paper products, food products, those donated things. Guess what, folks? In September, we have donated 1,216 pounds. So kudos to all of you, all the members, everyone that's donated. But I got news. We decided maybe we needed a new goal because we still got several months to go before the end of the year. So we're going to see if we can do another 500 pounds. Access, we also donate mainly paper products, cleaning products, gift cards, and so that's also appreciated. Food at First began at the church, at First Church, and then was relocated to First Christian. However, in the last several months, because of kitchen renovations that they're doing for the First Christian Church, they have used our kitchen and are very appreciative of being able to use our kitchen for meal preparation. And then the food is taken then to First Church and handed out. Another thing is the gas cards. A lot of people might not know about these. In the church office, we try to keep about $100 worth of these $20 increment gas cards. This is for individuals to come and request if they need to, say, go to a job interview, get to a doctor, some things, and they just don't have money to fill up that tank of gas. One card for individual per month. We do have that limitation because that way we can help more people rather than a few. But anyway, this is again, and the cards can only be used at the Cenex stations here in town. So, and that's just another thing that some of your donations and time have gone to. Another thing that's coming up, as I stated on October 20th, now we're going to have a blessing of these on October 10th, but are the UMCOR intergathering kits. And I hope everyone's heard of these. These are the different kits: personal dignity kit, student kit, layette kit, birthing kit, feminine hygiene kit. These are plastic bags. They are in the entryway of the church. If you would like to get one, there's a slip of paper that tells you what makes up each of these kits. Many of the children are gathering stuff for the student kits. In the past, the choir has done personal dignity kits and birthing kits. So it's kind of a teamwork with us all. Again, we need those completed by October 20th so that we can deliver those to Webster City on November 6th. Another thing that we've tried to focus on is finding those individuals in the church that are serving beyond the walls of the church. And these are just some of the examples, such as we have a representative that sits on Good Neighbor of Story County, the board. I did that for about 7 years. We also have a representative who sits on the Ames Ecumenical Housing Board. We have several individuals that assist with Food at First during the year, an individual that walks for Alzheimer's, people that help with Meals on Wheels, Ames Interfaith Alliance, the youth. We have people that help tutor and work do schoolwork at the youth shelter and service, and we have quite a few individuals who are volunteering with Boy Scouts of America, whether it be our church troop or other troops. So these are just examples of what you can do to do that missionary work. There's a wide variety of things you can do. So I know many members of First United Methodist Church donate their time and knowledge to many worthy organizations every day. So If you're donating your time to local, state, national, or international organizations, please consider contacting either me or someone else, one of the board members, and give us a little story on what you're doing, because we would love to put this in the monthly newsletter so that we can give an example to others of what they can also do to be the hands and feet of God. So that's the end of my presentation. If you have questions, I know there's several individuals who are on the board that are in the crowd. Otherwise, you can contact me or anyone, and I'd be happy to answer. So thank you very much for your time. And again, have a good evening.
All right. That was a great presentation by Steve. Get an introduction. My name is Marty Sankey. I'm the chair of the Finance Committee. Had the privilege of doing that for this past year. Next slide. Finances for any organization can be a challenge, and finances for a church have their own unique challenges. Throw in a pandemic for the last 2 years, and it multiplies the challenges that we have to deal with. So really, I would like to stress this first bullet point. It requires all of us working together to meet our goals, support our mission statement for today and tomorrow. And I want to thank everybody that has contributed. Everybody's done a great job, and really appreciative, and this makes it possible, your generosity, so that we continue now and into the future. On the slide, you see the areas I'm going to talk about, but I won't read them, so we'll just go on to the next slide. This year, the Finance Committee has been looking at our finances from kind of a 3-year standpoint. We pulled up, because life is, we all know it isn't normal, whatever normal is these days. So we were looking at the finances we had in 2019, 2020, and 2021. We picked the 19 because that was the pre-pandemic year, the quote normal year. 20 was our first year under the pandemic. We had a couple months where it was normal, and then 2021 is where we're at. The slide you have up here today shows the status of our finances as of the end of August of this year. And all 3 years, 19, 20, and 21, are through August only on this slide. If you look at the 2019 numbers for income, the top line, versus the 2020, we only had a slight, really, quite frankly, only a slight drop in income, about $12,000. It's only about 2.5%. But if you look at from 2020 to 2021, there was quite a much larger drop, almost a $49,000 drop in what we have in income coming in 2021 versus what we had in 2020. That's over a 10% drop in income. Now, where we have benefited, at least from a financial standpoint, is on the expense side. We had almost a $50,000 drop in expenses from 2019 to 2020, and in addition, another $24,000 drop from 2020 versus 2021. So our expenses have come down quite a bit, which helps us because our income has come down quite a bit. But as you can see on the slide for 2021, our expenses are still slightly greater than what our income is. Again, we're in right now, just strictly income versus expenses, we're $11,000 in the red. Further down on that, you see a line called PPP loan. What this is, the PPP stands for Paycheck Protection Program. And it's a program that was created to help small businesses get through this pandemic. We did qualify for the $89,200 in 2020 and another $68,500 in 2021. With the Paycheck Protection Program, if you use the money for specific items, most of it was staff salaries, staff benefits, utilities. If you use the money towards that, there are some other requirements. At the end, if you use it all, you could then, it was a loan, but then you could submit to have that loan forgiven. The same as both for 20 and 21. We have been forgiven for both 20 and 21 now, so we will not have to pay back those loans. So basically it becomes a grant. So that money is money that we can use for our operating budget, which really has been extremely beneficial to this church because it has allowed us to build that reserve that Sharon talked about in her presentation. Next slide. I'll go into that a little bit more. This slide here, I figured I'd let you see what happened in 19 and 20. These are the 19 and 20 numbers on this slide are the end of the year, the final numbers. And of course, 2021 is still the same numbers as the previous slide. If you remember 19, in August, we were running a deficit. Well, we had a pretty good end of the year in 2019, and so we came out just about even, to the good, about $2,900. 2020 ended up, income was greater than expenses by almost $25,000. Add into that $89,000 in the PPP program, and we had the reserves of $114,000. That's really critical because if you use the August expenses, the average, it costs us about $55,000 a month to keep the church running. With that $114,000 reserve, that gives us a little over 2 months of buffer to help, and you'll see it on the next slide, help with the ups and downs that we have with our income as a church, which happens all the time. So that really, getting that reserves is really a critical part, and the PPP loan really was a big part of that. Next slide. Oh, I guess on the last slide I should have mentioned too, for 2019 it was $55,000 a month. If you look back in 2021 it was $55,000 a month. If you go back to 2019, I believe it was about $63,000 a month. So if we get back to full church, guess what? Our expenses are going to be going up. So this next one, this slide here shows you the expenses and the income for 2021. The blue bars are our income and the orange ones are the expenses. And as I said before, the ups and downs of our income and expenses are very obvious on this chart right here, and that the cash reserves really helps us with the cash flow situation. That 55, you see the horizontal lines on there, very top line is $70,000, then it goes 60 and then 50. So to meet our expenses, we need to have the income, the blue lines, being right about in between the second and third lines from the bottom. And if you look at that chart, we have only done that 4 times in the first 8 months. The other months we've been below that 55,000. So it's really important that we have those cash reserves as we move forward. Next slide. So I do want to point out on the first bullet here, I do want to point out that the people that have pledged are generally doing a great job of keeping up with their pledges. And I really want to thank you for doing that. That's not where we're having our shortfall in funding. The people that pledge are keeping up and generally keeping their pledges current. Where the biggest decrease we've had this year is in the non-pledge amount. And where non-pledge is, there's a number of people that attend our church, but they don't fill out a pledge card every year, but they give annually. Well, that number, that dollar amount is down significantly this year, and that's really where our biggest decrease in funding has come from compared to previous years. So again, first bullet, our monthly member giving is generally running behind expenses. As I said, we're a little bit in the red, about $11,000 at the end of August. We are paying our expenses based on the criteria listed at the bottom of this slide. And I will say all expenses are paid for the first 4 priorities. Priority 1 is basically staff salaries and benefits. Priority 2 is utilities. 3 are services and suppliers. 4 companies, we have companies that we deal with, they're flexible when we pay them. And then the final 5th one is deferrable expenses, which mainly is our apportionments. So the first 4 categories are completely paid so far. We're up to date on all those. Priority 5, we have been deferring expenses. The council, or the church council, said we're going to pay the 40% minimum. If we can get more, we're going to pay more. We are on target now to exceed that 40%. If we continue paying as we are today, we'll be about 48%. But that is something we'll be discussing with the council here in the upcoming months too. And our cash reserves are in good shape. End of August, we were looking at having $141,000 in our reserves. So again, about 2.5 months worth of expenses. Next slide. Now we're going to transition over to beyond the building, our church mortgage. It's hard to believe that we added that addition back in 2013, $4.5 million. For those of you that were here then, remember walking in the south door, going up the curving stairway, the spiral stairway, about one way each direction, and I had never tried the elevator. That was like too dangerous to me. So this new addition has been a wonderful addition to this church, and I want to thank everybody who's helped us in paying down that mortgage. The big thing we did this year is we did refinance the mortgage. Just like everybody's seeing with home interest rates and all that, interest rates have declined quite a bit this year, so we took advantage of that. Our old interest rate was just about 4%. We were able to refinance that to 3.4%. So with that, that'll save us about $12,000 over the next 5 years in interest. Next slide. Where we're at, we have about $457,000 left in principal on the note. Our monthly payments are $7,000 a month. And we do have a balloon payment coming up in 5 years of $126,000. Currently, we have a little over $70,000 in our savings account, and we have received just under $40,000 in contributions. Again, these numbers are all at the end of August. And so we are chipping into our savings a little bit. Our expenses are exceeding our income a little bit beyond the building mortgage. So again, plead to you, if you want, this would be a great place to give money to. We need to help pay off that mortgage. Next slide. I'm going to talk briefly about the foundation also. Foundation, I want to thank everybody that's contributed to the foundation. The foundation basically has $1 million balance, plus or minus $1,000 for many years. Several years back, I was the chair of the foundation, and we had $1 million, so that doesn't seem to change too much. The bylaws allow that they can use 6% annual withdrawal from the foundation money. Most foundations operate on about a 4 to 5% withdrawal, so 6% is actually fairly high. They did consider dropping the rate down to maybe 5%, but one of the things that the foundation has really been helping our church at this last couple of years is repaying the member investment certificates for the mortgage. The foundation has paid over I believe it's $110,000 for those investment certificates. And so that has really created not a drain, but a big part of their budget had to go to repaying those certificates. So they felt they couldn't drop it down to 5 because they wouldn't have much money left to do anything else if they did drop it down to 5. So thank the foundation. They have done a great job of helping us with those investment certificates. One thing I think a lot of people get confused with the foundation, it cannot support the general operating budget of the church. It is not to pay the utility bills. That's not the purpose of the foundation. And so the committee goals, again, they want strict compliance with that 6%. They are looking at maybe possibly dropping to 5%. Again, lining with church priorities and encouraging any new contributions. Some of the examples of the last 5 years of things they've have put money towards, again, building repairs, repaying those investment certificates I stressed earlier, scholarships. Every senior is eligible for a 4-year scholarship from the foundation if they apply for it. There are varying degrees of what scholarship money they can get, but everybody is available. The foundation is very strong supporters of ASP. They've funded that quite a bit. We have not sent anybody on ASP for the last 2 years because of the pandemic, But as soon as we are able to send them, I'm sure the foundation will be supporting them then. And then camps. Hopefully everybody knows any child that wants to go to confirmation camp that's a member of our church, the foundation will pay for their fees for that camp. So they pay for all fees for our confirmation camp for our children. Next slide. All right, a little stewardship issues here, a little history. This chart, I guess, goes pledge history from going back to 2016 to currently. Really, if you look at it from 2016 to 2019, we've received about $500,000 in pledges during that time for each year during that time frame. And with about roughly, I'd say 220 pledge cards that were returned. Now, in 2020, the pledged amount dropped $27,000 over 2019 to the 461 number. But what's amazing is at the end of 2020, what was actually given was 569. So our congregation gave over $108,000 above what they had pledged. And so thank you very much for that. That made those earlier numbers why we were able to carry that balance, that excess balance over. And if you look at the number of people that pledged, 244, the highest number of any on this chart there. But now it comes to 2021. We have seen a decrease. And actually, if you look at it from 19 to 20 to 21, if you look at the amount pledged, has been decreasing every year. So after that record high in 2020, in 2021, we only had 170 pledge cards that were returned. So again, a drop of 74 giving units that did not return a pledge card. So again, you see the numbers are lower. Of those 170, 27 did not pledge a dollar amount. They said they would give if they were able to give. And so far, about half of them have given. But again, I do stress those that did pledge are doing a great job of meeting those pledges. Also in 2021, we'll go back. I guess it doesn't really matter, it's not on the chart anyway. There were 57 pledges to the Beyond the Building campaign, totaling just over $51,000. Also 29 pledges to the major trustees projects, totaling $19,000. I'll talk a little bit more about the major trustees project here coming up. So now we can go to the next one. So kind of summarizing the decline in pledges correlates to the numbers you saw with our income. That income is down this year. We are paying the minimum of 40, so our short-term goals, pay the minimum of 40%, we're gonna exceed that, right now at 48%. The cash reserves are looking very good going into 2022. We're gonna continue to analyze our giving pyramid. We'll be starting our stewardship campaign next month. I guess every week during the online service, I believe Mike always puts up in the chat session a link where you can just click on that link to give. So please continue, encourage you to give electronically. I've switched, I used to write a check every time I was in church. Now I give electronically all the time. And again, we need to improve our communication and education about finances. I think tonight is a good start of that. And I think we will have our budget met. Next slide. Some of our goals, financial challenges we have coming up, apportionment payments. We want to give more than the minimum. This church for years prided itself in paying 100% of our apportionments. Financial conditions have not allowed that, but we want to maybe increase that next year. And we want to increase it this year, so that's good, definitely one of our goals. Again, track our giving pyramid and hopefully increase the level of giving, level of pledges. We hope we get more than 170 pledge cards returned this coming year. Stewardship, a successful campaign for 2022. Again, Bruce White is heading up our stewardship program. Bruce is doing a great job. We just reviewed some of his ideas last night at our committee meeting. Had some great ideas. So if we can get, I think it's going to be a great campaign for the operating budget beyond the building. And then major trustees projects. I want to kind of talk about those a little bit. For last couple of years, we've had a couple major projects, the tuck pointing of the church and the east wing windows need to be replaced. I am happy to say that thanks to a very generous gift, the tuck pointing project has enough money to be paid for. And so that project is under contract. We have got a contractor. We have a signed contract with them. All we're waiting on now is for them to get us into their schedule. Whether that will happen yet this fall or this spring, if any of you have tried to hire a contractor during COVID, they are very, very busy. So, but the great news, again, thanks to a very generous gift, that project is paid for. But that still leaves us with the east wing window upgrade, and then we have a couple new ones, some things that we weren't counting on. The boiler system in the church is getting very old. The control system, the boilers themselves are fine, but the control system needs to be replaced. That's probably going to be in the neighborhood of a $30,000 project for that. In addition, our air conditioning units are getting very old. We have one air conditioning unit that's out. It's going to cost us $15,000. I guess maybe it's good that we're coming into October. We won't need the air conditioning quite so much, but it'll be $15,000 to replace that air conditioning unit. Plus, we have 3 other units that are just about the same age. So there's some pending major projects coming up. So again, as you look at your stewardship and your gifts, those are the type projects that your money will be going towards. And another thing I forgot to put on this slide that is really a progressive step that we've taken is a 3-point charge, the income we're going to get off that. I think there's going to be a lot of benefits to all 3 churches, but since I'm the finance guy, I'm going to talk about the finance benefit. We will be receiving income of $43,300 every year, or next year, I should say, because from Colo and Collins for the services of our pastors over there. So that money, that $43,300, will go directly into our operating budget. So that, we're looking for ways, be creative how we can have more income coming in. And so I thank Pastor Nikki and Pastor Karen because it's more work for them. And so they're doing a great job. With that, again, one of the things we need to really stress is the growth of ministries that are aligned and intentional. We will always have a limited amount of income. How we spend that money, we have to make sure we're spending it how we want to do it. And with that, I'll close my presentation.
Thanks, Marty. Next, we're going to look at our goals for 2022. I want to just remind you, these are preliminary, very preliminary. That's a starting point for the Administrative Council, Church Council to review, revise, refine in preparation for acceptance at Charge Conference in November. So, Kevin, I'll let you review them more.
Yeah, so the 3 areas that we're looking at focusing on this year with additional approval is to increase our outward mission efforts. So you heard Steve talk about that tonight and some of the things that we're already doing in that area, and we're going to continue to look at ways that we can grow and develop in that area. Intentionally move towards ongoing hybrid ministry offerings. I mean, you're witnessing that tonight for the online option. We had programs earlier today that were both online and virtual, or online and in person. So we're going to continue to invest in those areas and make sure people have that option. And then finally, to increase adult engagement by faith formation segment. Hopefully you remember I said that earlier tonight already. That's going to be an area that we'll measure and continue to grow and develop. So those will be further developed, these goals, in more measurable terms and discussed at our next council meeting in preparation for the Charge Conference coming up here in about a month. So with that, before we go to Q&A, I think just Sharon and I, as your co-chairs of the Administrative Council, would just like to share a few thank yous. First of all, thank you to everybody in our congregation, all members, for staying engaged over the last year and a half, when maybe it's been a bit challenging, when it's we're online and different things like that. And then, you know, we don't like to talk about the money side as much, but it does take money to run this church. So thank you to everybody and their financial contributions as we go on in our church life here. It takes a village, too. So almost the vast majority of our church members are on some type of committee. So we appreciate everybody that's willing to step up and participate that. If we're going to be a lay-led church, we got to have people that are active participants on the wide variety of committees that we have. We have to have people show up on Sundays to serve and greet and usher and different things like that. And there's some people, I'm looking at Dean out here, that regularly do that, and we really, really appreciate those people that are regularly serving in that matter. Those are people that are leaders, whether you're a leader of your committee or leading a Sunday school group or a small group, it takes time to prepare for those types of things, and we appreciate all the time and energy that people put into those different programs. I want to thank our staff that's continually adjusting to new ways of doing things, and you know, we got some gaps right now, so they're stepping up, they're putting extra time in to fill those gaps. So we want to thank our staff for all the adjustments that they've made over the years. He's not a staff member, but I think he's here about as much time as some of the staff members anyway. But Mike Evans, you know, all the things that he's done to make our church continue to be able to operate over the last year and a half. And Mike, maybe we should recognize Calvin too for his Boy Scout project, and putting us in position to be in this place in the first place. So thank you to the Evans family for all the work that they do. And finally to our pastors, Nikki and Karen, all the adjustments that you guys have had to make, and willingly stepping up for this 3-point charge. You know, that's extra work without, I think, any extra pay right now. So we recognize that and appreciate your commitment to the church and the Colo and Collins Church, and the great benefit it's been for their church as well. So Sharon, did I leave anything out?
I don't think so.
All right. So with that, we'll open it up to any questions that we might have. I think there was at least one or two that came in on the chat box already.
Right. Susan Frazier wanted to make sure everybody knew that the Saturday night service is without mask. It's in the chapel, and it is in casual dress. So a lot of people don't even think about the Saturday night service. So she is a participant in that and wanted that to be known. And Kathy Webb asked, do you think we will divide Myrna's position to organist and then a choir/bell choir director? And I don't know if there's anybody in here. Can that be answered? Do we know yet?
Just make it around right there.
So as some of you may know, I'm going to speak for Staff Parish Pete, so you wave if I go off base. Pete Peterson's up in the
Doing
loft.
sound.
Yep.
Thanks, Pete.
So organists are extremely rare. Very difficult to find a good organist, and sometimes even a mediocre organist. The Staff Parish has been working on this. They have written 3 different job descriptions, and we have been interviewing. We have found somebody, and we're waiting to hear a response back. So stay tuned. I don't know if the person that we're talking with is willing to pick up choir director and handbell, but we're set up to be able to go any way we can. The first priority was the organist, to get that person in place, and then we'll see what happens with choir director and handbell. Did I answer that okay, Pete? He gave me a thumbs up.
Kathy Webb also wanted to thank Finance that there's the option for having money automatically taken out of your checking account.
Is there any questions for the people that are here this evening? All right. We did have one question that came in preceding the event tonight, and it was about I may not get it exactly right, but the possibility of flip-flopping the protective and relaxed services, so that maybe we could have the relaxed service at 8:30 and protective at 11. I think that's a fair question. I know there's some people that like the 8:30 service versus 11 and all that kind of dynamic, and the original reason for having the 8:30 service being the more protective is that you start with a clean environment. That you start with a church building that hasn't had people in it and moving and operating and so forth. So that's why we're doing it the way we are. I think it's a great question, something we can maybe explore and talk about. Hopefully we're going to get to a point where we can become more relaxed in more areas in the not too distant future, and it will be less of a concern anyway. But is there anything, maybe Matt, you want to add to that you maybe didn't already hit on earlier? I think you kind of touched on some of those topics, but no. Okay. Any other questions coming in on the chat?
Nobody else? We had like 39 people or devices on the chat, on the live stream tonight, so great.
I would mention that this will be posted on YouTube, and we will get the slide deck posted. We've done that every year that we've done one of these, so we'll get a PDF set of slides, and so that you can go back anytime and take a look at this along with a closer look at some of the slides. There was a lot of information on those slides.
Thanks to everybody that stayed up tonight. It's getting close to my bedtime, I know that, so I don't know about the rest of you. But if there's no other questions, we will close out our session tonight. You bet.
So thank you to the team that has put this presentation together. You have done a wonderful job.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.